Hello and welcome to How to Sew. I am Laura, your guide to all things design. So the first step in preparing your seam tape for putting on your seam is to take your flat seam tape and you fold it in half. Not exactly completely in half, but you leave one, and it's hard to see white on white, but the bottom edge is sticking out just one bead, a little bit, so the top edge is not perfectly aligned on top of the bottom edge, and you press it that way all along your length, however long the seam tape is that you need. And the reason we do that is when we're sewing, we're going to have the shorter edge on top and the longer edge on bottom. You won't have to worry about whether or not you're catching that bottom edge because you know it's a little bit longer, it's always going to be caught, and we're always sewing right at that top edge so that it looks very nice and clean to the eye. So maybe you can see this, maybe not, but you see that they're not exactly one on top of the other. There's just a little bit sticking out on that bottom edge, and that's going to be very, very helpful when we sew that seam later on. Okay, let's go and sew that seam. Okay, so we're going to take our seam tape and we're going to open up just enough to slide the edge of the seam up against the fold. Then we just take that top piece and we fold it down. And remember, your longer side is going to be underneath, shorter side on top of the folded seam tape. And you are definitely going to line up the edge of your seam all the way up into that fold because you want to get as much coverage as possible. And as usual, I'm not using pins. I'm using my fingers as my anchors. All right, so we are going to start the process here. And I am sewing right up against the edge of that seam tape. And on this particular seam, as you see, I've got both of my my seams together in the one seam tape. Putting that edge all the way into the fold. And yeah, this, if you have a really long seam, this can be a lot of work, but it's so worth it to have a finished product. Have a product that looks really, really professional, cleanly finished on the inside. And then when we're finished, we'll just we'll cut the excess piece off. And we're ready to go. And there we have the seam. That's the top side that we just sewed. And as you can see, that bottom side, there's a little bit more sticking out, but that's perfectly fine because it's not really going to be seen. Because we're going to press our seam so that that's the part that gets seen. If anybody's going to see it at all, right? It's going to be on the inside of the garment. But the inside now looks as beautiful as the outside.